and this is Stitchless TV. And today we're going to make a summer coat out of a tablecloth. Now this tablecloth I bought whilst I was on holiday in Lefkada, Greece. To make this dress coat I'm using my vintage scarf raglan sleeve pattern, which I use for loads of things. I use it like a pattern block and I just adapt it each time I'm using it. But today we're going to use it for a coat. With my raglan sleeve pattern, we have one piece for the front and the back because we shape the front neck afterwards. Now what I want you to do is to fold that pattern, the main pattern front and back, I want you to fold it in half and put it to a fold. Now also I'm going to take away a little bit of the A-line-ness of it because I don't think I could fit it in if it's really A-line. So just shave it off on the side like this. So I've got my fabric to the fold. I've decided how long I want it to be by measuring from the nape of my neck going right down to the hem. And then I've just allowed that much extra. Now I really want you to remember to do the notches on the raglan sleeve part of the pattern. They're very important. And then you should end up with this. Now the other thing that you need to do is just cut up that fold so we end up with two pieces. Now I can never keep things simple, you know me, so I found this lovely embroidered napkin and I think I'm going to create a kind of yoke effect. Now basically the piece that we've just cut out, we use that as a pattern to then cut out our back. Now again, I don't have very much material, so what I'm doing is I'm putting my front piece, so-called front piece, I'm putting the centre front of it on the scalloped edge of the fabric and then just cutting it out, but it's going to be in two pieces, so somewhere along the line I'm going to have to fill in the gap with something, so I think I'm going to put this lace in the back. Now this is the amount of fabric we've got left after cutting out our front and back, and we still need to cut out our sleeves and the collar. I've got the fabric folded here and I've got this on the edge, so I'm going to cut out two pieces here, but I can only do like half the sleeve, but it will end up being one whole sleeve. Now for the other sleeve I can see that I can put it on the fold on the other side. I'm trying to keep that scalloped edge and the nice decorative pattern, so I'm going to cut one on the fold there, so in the end I should end up with two. And I've just about got enough material to cut a strip that is 70 centimetres by about 11 or 12. The first thing that we need to deal with is bonding these yokes onto our front pieces, and the way that we do that is we use this stuff called Bondaweb. Now all that we simply do is we cut it out, so I cut out two of them, so I've got one for each, so I cut two out at the same time. Place them exactly where we want them. So I've lined it up where I want it to go, and I get an iron. I mean, I probably should put a tea towel on top really, but I'm just doing the middle part first. So do exactly the same on the other side. I think we were struggling with the white tablecloth and the white table, so I've got my cutting mat out. Hopefully that will help. Now you can just come along and do a straight stitch 2 mils away from that raw edge, and then in time that will fray and look really nice. Or you can conceal that raw edge by, when you do stitch it on with a little bit of lace. So as I'm stitching the yoke to the coat, I'm also stitching this lace on. And then when I get to the corner, I'm going to leave the needle in, turn the fabric around, lift up the foot obviously, turn the fabric around, create a kind of little mitered pleat, and then just continue down to the edge. And so you should end up with something a bit like that. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to join our two back pieces together. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to put some lace in the middle, and I want to keep those scallops sort of showing. So I'm going to put them in the middle, just stitch straight down on both sides, and then that way they'll end up as one piece. I've stitched down one side, and what I did was I stitched in line with the line of the lace underneath, and then I end up with these nice scallopy bits. But one thing that I would like to say is whenever you're sewing lace or trimmings or bias binding, always leave yourself a little bit of an overhang, because it will come in handy later on for finishing off. I think it's come out really well. I love it, and I think it creates a bit of movement at the back as well. But look, guess what? I had a little bit left of the napkin, so I just have to create a yoke at the back, I think, to coordinate with my yoke at the front. Right, so we're nearly at the stage of it just being like ordinary material where we've cut out a coat. So do you remember those sleeves? One of them I was able to do to a fold, so that was all fine. But then the other one, there wasn't enough, so we're going to have a seam down it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fabric, now let me think. I'm going to put the fabric wrong sides together because I want my seam to be exposed. So I'm starting at the hem. I'm just going to sew 1 centimetre backwards and forwards, so that when I press this seam open, it creates a really nice scallopy feature. Okay, my super last job is I'm going to bond this lace onto the piece that we cut out for the collar, and then I'll just stitch it along each edge afterwards, and then that will be completely ready. Finally, we're ready to sew. Now if you're using regular fabric, you would be starting at this point. You've cut out all your pieces and you're ready to sew. So the first thing that we're going to do is we get our sleeves and we put them right sides together with the front pieces of the coat, and we're going to stitch them along the raglan sleeve bit. Now remember, line up those notches and to go backwards and forwards to begin with to close off the seam, and about 1 centimetre seam allowance, and backwards and forwards at the end. Now when you've done both sides, then you need to zigzag that edge, but I'm going to use my old 1970s overlocker. So I finished off the edge of that seam, and then I'll do the same on the other side. So when you've stitched on both of those sleeves at the front and you finish them off as well, I then want you to close off this dart. So we put the fabric right sides together, and then we just stitch from the neck going off into nothing to close off the dart. And then when you've stitched up both of those darts, make sure that you press them towards the back. Right, now what we do is we get our back piece and we simply put the fabric right sides together and attach the sleeves onto the back now. So they just go on in the same way as we did at the front. So do that on both sides. So make sure that you've pressed those seams before you move on to the next stage, which is shaping the neckline. If you don't have a dummy, just try it on and look in front of a mirror and start to shape the neckline at the front. It would be a good idea to mirror what you've done on that side. So just the piece you've cut off, just use it as a template. So to do the collar, this is what I do because I find it a lot easier, especially if I'm doing the pinless sewing technique. So I've already stitched my lace onto one side. If you were using regular fabric, you'd probably iron some sort of stiffener like violin or interfacing, just to give it a bit of body. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over right sides together and get it completely in line, and then I'm going to stitch down one side, either curving it or having it straight. It depends how you want the finish to be. Right, in the end I did mine as a little curve. Now I want you to really trim it back to maybe just 2 mils away from the edge, and then turn it the right way round. Now we're only doing this on one side. We're not doing it on both sides at the moment. And now you need to press that very, very well so you get a nice curve there, or nice square if you're doing it as a square edge. And then give it a good old press all the way down. I've been struggling a little bit because I've been looking for things that I can use as my facing for the front, knowing that it's going to show through where the cut work is. And I'm not totally happy with what I've found, but I'm just going to have to go with it. Now if you were just doing it in regular fabric, you'd allow extra to come right up to that seam there, going straight the way down and with the same sort of shape on the neck. So stitching it on using a straight stitch, I'm starting at the top. I'm going to have an overhang, and I'm only going to sew just a couple of mil from the edge. Off we go. Backs and forwards to begin with, and just keep going all the way down, and then press it back when you've sewn it all down to one side first of all. So I've pressed it that way. Now I'm going to press it going back as a facing, but I'm not going to stitch it down yet. I won't stitch it down until I've put the collar on. So although I'm not stitching it down, I am going to shape where it attaches to the neck. So it ends up having this nice finish on it, and when it's stitched down it will look really professional. So we get our collar, and it isn't finished at the other end. So we get our collar, and what we're going to do is we're going to open this stuff up, all of it, pushing it all to one side, the seam allowance and everything, and we're going to line that up just with that edge there and stitch all the way round. But we're going to stop when we get to just past that dart there, coming to the next sleeve seam. Oh, how annoying. I should have made it so that I started on the left side, because when you sew you've got to have your fabric to the left, but I can't turn it over because I've got the lace there. So I'm just going to have to endure sewing it from the right side and squash all my fabric through that arm. Oh, that's really annoying. Now, when you're attaching something that's curved onto something straight, just straighten out the curved thing and just pretend that it's straight. Right, so we've stitched it going all the way around here, and then we've stopped more or less in line with the shoulder dart. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to see how much of the collar we need to get us to the end there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that and then I'm just going to finish off the collar like we did in the beginning. Do you remember? So I'm folding it right sides together, and then I'm just going to shape it or sew straight. Right, we should press it at this stage, but I need to get on. So I'm not going to press it, I'm just going to attach it. So that should fit perfectly. So if I line it up with the edge and then line it up with here, by the time I sew it on, it should fit perfectly. Now when I sew it now, I'm going to start at the edge and then work back to where I am, because I can always ease it a little bit to fit, but the edge has to be exact. So our edges have all been overlocked. Now we just need to deal with this facing part. So all we do is this, I just fold it back, making sure those seams are going that way. I make it aligned with the edge there, and then we just got to sew a straight stitch along there and then snip into mite that edge to take away the fullness. So what we end up with is something like this, which I think is a pretty good finish, really. To finish off the front, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew in line with the edge of the ribbon, but a little bit in. I can sort of see through where it is. Straight down. I'm going to be sewing it from the top, okay, from the top, and that way nothing will move underneath, hopefully anyway. I thought I'd show you again what you do with the end of the ribbon, which is your facing. So I've turned it over, I'm folding it up so it's going in with all that seam allowance there. I'm lining it up. Now it would be a good idea to press that, because then that would just stay in place. And then I'm folding it over like that, but press it into place, because then it will just stay. Right, we're doing really well because we're nearly there. Now I've decided I'm not going to have pockets, sorry, I'll have to show you another one. What I'm going to do is I want slits up the side, so I can't have slits and pockets. So in order for that to happen, you need to overlock each of your edges. So I've got one there, so 4 edges going from the end of the sleeve all the way down to the hem. So when you've zigzagged or overlocked all of your edges, now is the time to put the hem of your sleeve together and your hem together, get it all lined up. Now decide where you want your split to go up to. About there. So I'm going to put a tiny little notch there so I know where to stop. Now when you've done that, it's very important you get your iron out and you press your seam allowances back, and then from the top side we're going to stitch all the way up, come across the top of that split and go all the way down on the other side, and then you've got to do that to the other side as well. So I've reached the top of one of my splits. I'm leaving the needle in and lifting up the foot. I'm going to turn it around and then put the foot back down, stitch right across, leave the needle in, lift up the foot, push all of the fabric through the arm, foot back down, and I just come back down on the other side. So when you finish the other side as well, you will end up with this, which I have to say is looking a little bit Dolce & Gabbana-like, don't you think? Especially with the embroidery along here. Thank you so much for watching Stitchless TV sewing channel, and if you decide to make your summer coat out of something weird like a tablecloth, or maybe you can find something stranger to make it out of, share it with me on my Facebook page, Stitchless TV sewing channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you again soon. Bye.